What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. We're getting 2025 started off with a bang with a gigantic new Switch 2 leak that has the motherboard, the SOC, the RAM, and we also have new information regarding 4K DLSS, possible confirmation by Nintendo themselves that Switch 2 will have this capability, and it's very exciting. But first of all, if you do enjoy this content, please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and we will get started. We had the now famous Reddit Switch 2 leak form post the motherboard in full of the Nintendo Switch 2 with the SOC all shown in detail, including things like the RAM and the cartridge slot being shown. But basically the main thing to take away from it is that there's one cartridge slot, and most likely this will be playing both Switch 1 and Switch 2 cartridges, because we know Furukawa himself did talk about that the Switch 2, the successor to the Nintendo Switch, will be able to play Switch 1 games on the console in backwards compatibility. This was confirmed by Nintendo themselves, so it does appear that the Switch 2 will have the ability to play both versions of cartridges on the same cartridge slot. That was one question people had, and it looks like we may have that confirmation. Even in the leaked pictures, it shows there's a cartridge right in there being ready to be played. So we have that information to go on, and also that Switch 2 will have physical media. It won't just be a digital only type of device. And we also have confirmation that the RAM, leaving serial numbers listed here in detail, very high resolution. You can see it very clearly if you look it up, that this is the 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X. The code right here and the information lines up perfectly with that, and that is also great news because the memory, that's 3 times more than Switch 1, plus it is much faster and more power efficient than Switch 1. Switch 1 uses that very old LPDDR4, not even 4X, not even LPDDR5, but LPDDR4 is what Switch uses, and it is only 4 gigabytes for the entire system, and about 3 gigabytes for games was the most it could use. I assume the Switch 2 will have at least 10 gigabytes to use for games, maybe even 10.5 gigabytes depending on how they allocate the OS memory for the Switch 2 to use. So this is great news, but the big topic that everyone's discussing online is the Switch 2 SOC, and with the possible confirmation that this is a Samsung based SOC. There's been a lot of talk about Samsung versus TSMC and the nanometer size, many people assuming that if it's anything Samsung based, it's automatically going to mean it's going to be 8 nanometers, which many people have been assuming would be bad news, quote unquote, for Switch 2 due to the heat and power consumption it would need to produce graphics for what it needs in portable mode. But like we've been discussing for the past year or so or more, in docked mode, 8 nanometers would not be bad for Switch 2. It would be just fine. It would be able to clock really well, and it wouldn't have an issue. It's always been the portable mode that people have been worried about. If it is 8 nanometers, many people assume it would not have very long battery life at all if it was like that. However, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. We don't have confirmation that this is the size of the chip yet. We just don't know, but the SN in front here kind of confirms that this is a Samsung developed product for Nintendo. And the reason why we know that is if we look at the RTX 3050 mobile edition that we discussed in our last video, you'll see that the S1 here, this pretty much means it's Samsung built. Samsung made the RTX 3050 mobile edition on 8 nanometers Ampere for laptops, and it's worked really well for them so far. So many people basically have assumed that due to this means that Switch 2 is also using Samsung 8 nanometers. But very key things to remember here is that this SOC definitely does look different than the RTX 3050. And the key difference also is that this is a GPU, meaning the RTX 3050. This is only a GPU. And the Switch 2 will be running the CPU and the GPU on the same die. So it is very possible that Samsung could be actually fabricating this on a completely different die, meaning 4 nanometers or even 5 nanometers, depending on what Nintendo has ordered. It being 8 nanometers is not a given at this point, and many people have actually measured this chip versus Nvidia's other 8 nanometer chips like Orin, for example, and Jetson, and the size just doesn't line up. From many estimates out there, this seemingly is too small to be an 8 nanometer chip, from what many people are saying. Now, of course, it is possible that this is 8 nanometers total in size, including the CPU and GPU on the same die. That is very possible. But like I said, we just don't know yet, guys. So many people are just jumping to conclusions out there, and we have to wait for the actual confirmation and performance numbers themselves when we do see them from Nintendo and when we actually see the games in action to know for sure what this system can do. But I want to be very clear that personally, I am not worried whatsoever for the Switch 2 performance. Everything from developers, from what they've been saying, is that this console will get all the AAA ports, basically 99% of them, coming into the future, including games from PS5. And I don't think this is going to have any problems running new games, especially in docked mode. So I don't think there's anything to worry about here. Possibly battery life could be an issue due to the amount of power it needs. Nintendo may need to actually downclock this thing really low to get these games running with good battery life on the go. We just don't know for sure how streamlined this chip is yet. We have to wait and see the results when Nintendo reveals the console, hopefully this month in January, because quite frankly, this is getting kind of ridiculous. You got to think, right? This is being shown pretty much in full for everyone to see, besides just footage of games running on the console. So we have everything in line here for the Switch 2 to be revealed very soon. Plus, on top of this, we have more great news regarding DLSS for Switch 2, because we have a brand new update on a patent that Nintendo has been working on for the past few years. And this is for basically AI upscaling images and graphics. And it doesn't say DLSS here in the patent, but it's pretty much DLSS because they're dealing with neural networks, and neural networks is something AI based, and that is what DLSS works on with Nvidia graphics cards to basically create upscaling for graphics for games to run at higher resolutions from lower resolution outputs. Now, this patent, Nintendo actually talked about using 540p as the base resolution and upscaling that to 1080p. Now, you may think, wow, that's very low, but you got to think that Nintendo's going to be using 540p as the base resolution for not docked mode per se, but more so portable mode. And that makes a lot of sense. If you recall, back on our live stream in September of 2024, we talked about an example of Final Fantasy 16 running at about 540p upscaled to 1080p. And we estimated that that was pretty much what Nintendo would need to use to get the games running decently and look good enough on the go without having too much distracting aliasing and artifacts on the screen, because DLSS is just so much better than FSR 3 at this point. And this would seem to line up with that. This patent that they updated using 540p as a base image to upscale to 1080p would actually be pretty darn good, I would say, with Nvidia DLSS. But the question arises, why exactly would Nintendo need a patent if DLSS is already actually available to use? And the simple answer is, in my opinion at least, is that Nvidia likely is working on a very specific version of DLSS for the Nintendo Switch 2, and Nintendo likely has paid for this to work with all Switch 2 games out of the box or in their development kits. So that could be the reason why we have both this leaked SOC Nvidia-based chip for the Switch 2 being shown in full right here, plus patent being updated at the same exact time, December 31st, 2024, for AI upscaling for graphics from 540p to 1080p. But it doesn't just stop there. It actually goes up to 4K as well. This patent, if you scroll down to page 26, even give some visual examples here. If you scroll down to page 26 of this patent, it very clearly says that this actually can be used, this same technology Nintendo's patenting, likely with Nvidia, because this is Nvidia technology. If you look down on page 26 in the first paragraph on the right side, it says that, for example, a neural network for upconverting to 1080p from 540p will be different than one upconverting from 1080p to 1440p. It will also be appreciated that while the example shown in the figures relates to transforming 540p to 1080p, the techniques herein may be applied to other image sizes, including 720p to 1080p, 480p to 1080p, 1080p to 1440p, and 1080p to 4K, and even 720p to 4K, which basically covers the entire gambit of resolutions that everyone uses today, including all the way up to 4K. So this is basically a customized version of DLSS that Nintendo is using, likely with Nvidia making it for them. and it's going to be covering the entire range of all resolutions for Nintendo with Switch 2. And this is actually great news because, like we've been talking about, in portable mode, that's where it's going to be needing the most upscaling probably available to it, because it's going to be outputting at such a low resolution, including possibly down to even 480p as they bring out here. And I do appreciate that they're not really talking about 320p or something like that. 480p is the lowest that they go here, which is great news. But as we talked about before and showed on video, that upscaling from these lower resolutions with DLSS is much better quality for the end user than FSR is. It's just far better. And if Nintendo has a customized version of DLSS working for Switch 2, this is likely going to look fantastic on the Switch 2 on the go. And when you're plugging it into your TV, it's going to look great as well. And if you're curious about what this means for DLSS in terms of performance levels versus quality levels, 720p to 4K is considered ultra performance mode. So that would be like the lowest you would go. And then performance mode is 1080p to 4K, and balance mode is somewhere around 1200p to 4K, and then quality mode is usually 1440p upscaled to 4K. Then of course you have native resolutions after that. But it is really nice to see that it looks like Switch 2 is going to be getting the entire gambit of customized DLSS features for the console, and it's going to be a huge benefit and win for the Switch 2, because it's going to need every bit of that upscaling technology for the games to look great for you as the player. So I'm really excited about this, and no, I'm personally not worried at all about Switch 2. I'm extremely excited, and I think it's going to be a great console. Everyone's going to want to buy it. This is 2025. We got Metroid Prime 4. We got Switch 2 coming. I couldn't be happier actually as a gamer. I think we got everything lined up to have a huge, fantastic, stellar year for Nintendo and for gaming in general. This is going to be a banger of a year, guys. All right, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.